Jake Morrison sat on the cold metal floor and stared at his hands. The chains around his wrists felt heavy. They made a soft sound when he moved. 3 months had passed since the aliens took him from Earth. 3 months since he watched his world burn. The room was big and filled with strange machines. Blue lights danced across screens that showed maps of distant planets. Jake could not read the alien writing, but he understood the pictures. Red dots meant fighting. Yellow dots meant problems. Green dots meant peace. Commander Lyra Vex stood near the biggest screen. She had 4 arms and skin that looked like blue crystal. Her people called themselves Zephyrians. They were proud warriors who had conquered many worlds. Earth was just another planet on their list. Jake watched Vex point at a red section of the map. She spoke quickly to her officers in their clicking language. Jake had learned some words during his time as a prisoner. They were talking about rebels in the outer planets. The rebels were winning too many fights. The humans from Sector 7 destroyed another supply ship, Vex said in English. She had learned Jake's language to give him orders. Our best generals cannot stop these attacks. Her officers made worried clicking sounds. Jake kept watching the screen. He could see the problem clearly. The Zephyrian ships moved in straight lines. They attacked the same way every time. Any smart enemy could predict their moves. Vex turned to look at Jake. Her large black eyes showed anger and frustration. "You were a military leader on your world," she said. "Your people fought us for 6 months before we won. You must know about war." Jake said nothing. He had not spoken since the day they captured him. Words felt useless now. "I order you to speak," Vex said louder. "Tell me how to defeat these rebels." Jake looked at her but stayed quiet. He had been a colonel in the Earth Defense Force. He had commanded thousands of soldiers. Now he was just a slave in chains. But his mind still worked. His eyes still saw patterns. Vex's crystal skin turned darker blue. This meant she was getting angry. "Do you think your silence makes you strong? Do you think it hurts me?" Jake turned back to the screens. A new battle report was coming in. More red dots appeared on the map. The rebels had attacked 3 more places at the same time. The Zephyrian forces were spread too thin. "Look at me when I speak to you," Vex demanded. Jake kept watching the tactical display. He could see exactly what the rebels were doing. They hit supply lines instead of fighting big battles. They moved fast and disappeared before help could arrive. It was smart fighting. One of Vex's officers, a tall Zephyrian with gold markings on his arms, spoke up. "Commander, perhaps the human cannot understand our superior methods of war." Jake almost smiled. Superior methods. The Zephyrians had won. Against Earth, through numbers and better weapons, not better tactics. They fought like ancient armies from his world's history books. March forward and hit hard. It worked against weaker enemies, but these rebels were different. Vex walked closer to Jake. "You watch our screens every day. You see our battles. I know you understand what is happening." She was right. Jake understood perfectly. The rebels were using human-style guerrilla warfare mixed with alien technology. They struck fast and ran away. They made the Zephyrians chase them into traps. They turned the enemy's strength against them. "We have lost 12 ships this week," Vex continued. "Good soldiers are dying because we cannot predict where the rebels will attack next." Jake's eyes moved to a smaller screen showing supply routes. The pattern was obvious. The rebels always hit the longest routes first. They attacked when Zephyrian patrols were furthest away. They knew exactly when and where to strike. "The human is broken," said another officer. "His mind is empty. We should get a different slave." Vex studied Jake's face. "No, look at his eyes. He is thinking. He sees something we do not." She was smart for an alien. Jake had to give her that. Most Zephyrians thought humans were just primitive animals. But Vex paid attention. She noticed details. "Very well," Vex said. "You will not speak, but you will work." She pressed buttons on a control pad. A small screen appeared in front of Jake. It showed the same tactical map the officers were using. "Study this," she ordered. "Learn our problems. Tomorrow I will give you a test." Jake looked at the screen but showed no reaction. Inside, his mind was already working. He could see supply lines, patrol routes, and enemy movements. The rebels were good, but they followed patterns too. Everyone did. Vex and her officers left the room. Jake was alone with the guards and the glowing screens. He had been given exactly what he needed: information. For the first time in months, Jake felt something like hope, not for escape, not for rescue, but for purpose. His war with the Zephyrians was over, but war itself was a language he still spoke fluently. The hours passed slowly. Jake memorized every detail on the screens: troop movements, supply schedules, communication patterns. The Zephyrians kept good records, maybe too good. Late that night, when the guards were tired and bored, Jake made his move. The control pad was just close enough to reach. His chains were long enough if he stretched. Jake's fingers moved carefully across the alien controls. The interface was different from human computers, but logic was universal. He found the tactical planning system and opened a new file. Working quietly in the dark room, Jake began to design something the Zephyrians had never seen before: a battle plan that used their own strengths in new ways, a trap that would catch the rebels using their own tactics against them. By morning, when Commander Vex returned, she found Jake sitting in the same position, but on her command screen was a complete military strategy. Every detail was perfect. Every move was planned 3 steps ahead. Vex stared at the screen for a long time. Then she looked at Jake with something that might have been respect. "You did this?" she asked. Jake met her eyes and gave one small nod. For the first time since his capture, Jake Morrison had spoken, not with words, but with something more powerful. He had shown them what he could do. The game was just beginning. Commander Vex could not sleep. Jake's battle plan glowed on her personal screen in her quarters. She had read it 20 times, looking for mistakes. There were none. The plan was brilliant. It used Zephyrian technology in ways her own generals never thought of. It turned their heavy warships into bait for a trap. It made their slow movements look like weakness when they were actually strength. But it came from a human slave who would not speak. The next morning, Vex brought Jake to a different room. This one was smaller and quieter. A single chair sat in front of a computer terminal. No chains this time. "Sit," Vex ordered. Jake looked at the chair, then at her. He sat down slowly. "I am going to test you," Vex said. "I will show you old battles from our military academy. You will have 1 hour to solve each problem." She activated the computer. The screen showed a 3-dimensional space battle. Blue ships represented Zephyrian forces. Red ships were the enemy. Numbers showed how many weapons and shields each ship had. "This is the Battle of Kepler Station," Vex explained. "It happened 50 years ago. Our forces were outnumbered 3-1. The Academy teaches this as an impossible situation." Jake studied the display. His eyes moved between the ship positions, the terrain, and the tactical information. Asteroids floated between the 2 fleets. A space station hung in the middle like a prize. "Your time begins now," Vex said. Jake's hands moved over the controls. The alien interface was getting easier to understand. He began moving the blue ships into new positions. Instead of charging forward like the original battle, he pulled them back toward the asteroids. Vex watched in fascination. Jake was using the asteroids as cover. He split his smaller fleet into 3 groups. One group hid behind the biggest asteroid. The second group pretended to run away. The third group stayed near the space station like they were protecting it. The enemy took the bait. The red ships chased the retreating group, thinking the Zephyrians were scared. But Jake had calculated their path perfectly. When the red ships passed the big asteroid, the hidden group attacked from behind. The retreating group turned around and attacked from the front. The enemy was trapped. "Impossible," Vex whispered. Jake finished the simulation in 43 minutes. The Red Fleet was completely destroyed with minimal Zephyrian losses. He had won the impossible battle. "Show me another one," Vex said. For the rest of the day, Jake solved military problems that had stumped Zephyrian officers for decades. He won battles against superior numbers. He captured planets with tiny invasion forces. He defended worlds that should have fallen in hours. Each victory used the same principles: patience instead of aggression, deception instead of brute force, making the enemy defeat themselves. Dr. Nix Zorin arrived that evening. He was the Zephyrian military's chief scientist, a thin alien with silver markings on his crystalline skin. He carried several data pads and looked very excited. "Commander Vex, I have analyzed the human strategies, he said. The results are remarkable. Zoran activated a holographic display that showed statistical charts and graphs. The human does not think like us. We focus on destroying the enemy. He focuses on controlling the enemy's behavior. Explain, Vex said. Look at this pattern. Zoran pointed to a chart. In every simulation, the human made the enemy move exactly where he wanted them to go. He predicted not just what they would do, but why they would do it. Jake sat quietly and listened. He understood more of their language now than he let them. No, the human studies psychology, not just tactics, Zoran continued. He knows how different species think in battle. Zephyrians are proud and direct. We attack what threatens us. Other species are different. Some are cautious, some are greedy, some are afraid. Vex looked at Jake with new understanding. He uses our nature against us. Not against you, Commander. For you. Watch this. Zoran showed Jake's solution to the Kepler station battle again. The human knew the enemy would chase retreating ships because that species never gives up a fight. He knew they would ignore the asteroid because they focus on moving targets, not hiding places. And he knew we would follow his plan because Zephyrians respect clever tactics, Vex said slowly. Exactly. The human has been watching us for months. He knows how we think, how we move, how we make decisions. He has turned that knowledge into weapon. That night, a new human slave was brought to the facility. Amy Chen had been an engineer on Earth before the invasion. She was small and quiet, with short black hair and tired eyes. The guards put her in the same room as Jake. She looked around at the tactical screens and computer terminals. They have you working on military stuff? She asked in English. Jake nodded once but did not speak. My name is Amy. I used to build starship engines before... She gestured at the chains around her wrists. Before all this. Jake looked at her with sympathy but remained silent. I heard rumors about a human who helps them plan battles, Amy continued. Some of the other slaves think he's a traitor. Others think he's playing a long game. She moved closer to Jake. Which one are you? Jake thought about her question. Was he helping his captors? Yes. Was he betraying humanity? He did not think so. He was surviving. He was learning. And maybe someday that knowledge would matter. You don't talk, do you? Amy said. I get it. Sometimes silence is the only power we have left. Over the following days, Amy watched Jake work. She saw him study battle reports and design new strategies. She noticed how the Zephyrian officers treated him with growing respect. They're starting to depend on you, she told him one evening. That's dangerous for them and useful for you. Jake looked at her and nodded. Amy was smart. She understood the game he was playing. Just remember, Amy said quietly, when the time comes to choose sides, remember who you really are. Jake's next test came sooner than expected. Commander Vex received emergency orders from the High Command. The rebels had attacked a major supply depot. Zephyrian forces were scattered and confused. The situation was getting worse every hour. I'm authorized to use your strategies in real combat, Vex told Jake. If you are wrong, many soldiers will die. Jake looked at the tactical displays showing the rebel attack. It was bigger and more coordinated than anything they had tried before. The rebels were hitting multiple targets at once, just like his first battle plan had predicted they would. He began working on the computer, designing a response that would end the rebellion quickly and decisively. But as he worked, he thought about Amy's words. Choose sides. Jake finished his plan and showed it to Vex. It would work perfectly. The rebels would be defeated within days. But something else would happen too, something he did not tell her. The plan would also reveal exactly how the Zephyrian military operated. Every strength, every weakness, every standard procedure would be exposed in the fighting. Information that might be very valuable to the right people someday. This is acceptable? Vex asked, studying his strategy. Jake gave her one firm nod. She smiled, showing sharp crystalline teeth. Then we begin immediately. The battle for the Outer Rim lasted exactly 4 days. Jake's strategy worked perfectly. The rebels found themselves trapped in a web they could not escape. Every move they made led them deeper into Zephyrian hands. Commander Vex, now promoted to general, stood in the command center watching the final rebel ships surrender. Around her, Zephyrian officers celebrated their greatest victory in years. "The humans' plan saved thousands of lives," said Captain Rex Vale, a field commander, who had led one of the assault groups. "His tactics let us win without destroying entire cities." Jake sat in his usual corner watching the celebration quietly. He had studied the battle reports as they came in. Everything had gone according to his calculations. But something else had happened, too. The Zephyrian officers had started asking for his opinion during the fighting, not with words. They would look at him when they received new information. They would watch his face for reactions. When Jake nodded, they felt confident. When he looked concerned, they became more careful. A human slave was becoming their battle advisor without saying a single word. Admiral Zara Kess arrived the next morning. She was the highest-ranking military officer Jake had ever seen. Her crystal skin had deep purple markings that showed great age and experience. 4 guards came with her, but she dismissed them when she entered the room. "So you are the silent strategist," she said in perfect English, "the human who speaks through victory instead of words." Jake looked at her but remained quiet. "I have read all your battle plans," Admiral Kess continued. "They show a level of tactical understanding that rivals our greatest generals, perhaps exceeds it." She activated the main tactical display. Instead of showing one battle, it showed an entire sector of space. Dozens of star systems spread across the hologram like glowing jewels. "We face a crisis, human. 3 separate rebellions have started in different systems. Our forces are stretched thin. Our generals argue about which threat to handle first." Jake studied the display. The 3 rebellion zones formed a triangle of chaos. Zephyrian fleets moved back and forth between them like a person trying to put out 3 fires with 1 bucket of water. "Our war council has debated for months," Admiral Kess said. "Some want to crush the rebellions one at a time. Others want to divide our forces equally. A few suggest we abandon the outer systems entirely." She looked directly at Jake. "I want to know what you think." For the first time since his capture, someone was asking for Jake's advice as an equal, not demanding it as an order. He could feel the difference. Jake approached the tactical display and began studying the details: ship positions, supply lines, communication networks. The 3 rebellions looked separate, but patterns connected them. After an hour of analysis, Jake began entering commands into the control system. He pulled up historical data, trade routes, and population statistics. Slowly, a picture formed in his mind. "The rebellions are coordinated," Admiral Kess said, watching Jake work. "You see it too?" Jake nodded and continued working. He traced communication patterns between the rebel systems. The attacks were too well timed to be coincidence. Someone was commanding all 3 groups. Our intelligence suggests the leader is General Pike Storm, an Altarian we captured 3 years ago. He escaped from our prison planet 6 months before the rebellions started. Jake had never heard of Altarians, but he could see their tactics in the battle reports. They were different from humans or Zephyrians. More patient, more willing to sacrifice short-term gains for long-term advantages. "General Storm is considered a tactical genius among his people," Admiral Kess continued. "Our standard responses have failed completely against him." Jake spent the next several hours creating a comprehensive battle plan. Not just for one system, but for all 3 at once. The strategy was complex and would require perfect timing across vast distances. When he finished, Admiral Kess stared at the holographic display in amazement. Jake's plan would coordinate 17 different battle groups across 8 star systems. Every movement was calculated to support the others. "This is not just a battle plan," she said quietly. "This is a work of art." The strategy used Zephyrian strengths in new ways, while accounting for Altarian psychology. It made the enemy's coordination into a weakness by forcing Storm to defend too many places at once. "If this works, you will have saved the Empire," Admiral Kess said. "But if it fails, thousands will die, and you will be blamed." Jake looked at her steadily and nodded once. He understood the risks. "There is one problem," Admiral Kess continued. "This plan requires a level of authority no slave has ever been given. You would need to coordinate fleet movements across multiple sectors. You would be commanding Zephyrian admirals and generals." Jake waited to see what she would decide. Senator Quinn Hale argues that giving such power to a human sets a dangerous precedent. Other slaves might expect similar treatment. She paused and studied Jake's face. But I have noticed something interesting. In all your strategies, you have never once suggested actions that would harm Zephyrian forces or help human resistance movements. That was true. Jake had thought about it many times. He could have designed plans that looked good but contained hidden traps. He could have found ways to help the rebels or hurt his captors. But he had not. Every strategy was designed to achieve Zephyrian victory with minimal casualties on all sides. He was not sure why he made that choice. Maybe it was professional pride. Maybe it was something else. I believe your loyalty is to the art of strategy itself, not to any particular species, Admiral Kess said. You want to solve puzzles and win games regardless of who benefits. Jake considered her words. She might be right. War was a language he understood better than any other. The thrill of designing a perfect strategy was almost addictive. Very well, Admiral Kess decided. Operation Silent Storm will begin immediately. You will coordinate all fleet movements from this command center. Over the next week, Jake's multi-system campaign unfolded exactly as planned. Rebel forces found themselves fighting battles they could not win on grounds they had not chosen. General Storm's coordination began breaking down as his separate rebellion groups were isolated from each other. Captain Rex Vale reported from the front lines, "The rebels are confused and demoralized. They expected us to fight the same old way. Instead, we are 3 steps ahead of every move they make." But the most impressive part was not the tactical brilliance, it was the efficiency. Jake's strategies achieved total victory with minimal casualties on both sides. Rebel soldiers surrendered rather than dying in hopeless battles. Zephyrian forces captured objectives without destroying cities or massacring civilians. He fights like someone who values all life, not just his own side, General Vex observed. On the 7th day, General Pike Storm himself sent a surrender message. It was addressed not to Admiral Kess or the Zephyrian High Command, but to the silent strategist who had defeated him. I have studied warfare for 40 years, Storm's message said. I have never faced a mind like yours. Your victory is complete and well-earned, but I warn you, your greatest test still awaits. Jake read the message and wondered what Storm meant. What greater challenge could there be than coordinating a 3-system military campaign? He would find out sooner than expected. Admiral Kess entered the command center with an expression Jake had never seen before. She looked worried and excited at the same time. "Human," she said formally. "We have received a long-range transmission from the edge of our territory. A large fleet approaches our borders." She activated the tactical display. Jake saw dozens of ship signatures moving towards Zephyrian space. The configuration was familiar but seemed impossible. "The ships match human design patterns," Admiral Kess continued. "But they use technology we have never seen before. Advanced shields, new weapons, propulsion systems that should not exist." Jake stared at the display in shock. Somehow, some of his people had survived. Not just survived, but grown stronger. "They demand your immediate release," Admiral Kess said, "and they threaten war if we refuse." For the first time in months, Jake Morrison smiled. Emperor Vox Zerion stood 3 meters tall, and his crystal skin glowed with ancient power symbols. He was the supreme ruler of the Zephyrian Empire, master of 1,000 worlds. But today, he looked troubled. "Explain this situation," he commanded. Admiral Kess in the throne room. Jake stood between heavily armed guards, still wearing chains, but no longer treated like a common slave. Around the massive hall, Zephyrian nobles and military leaders watched with intense curiosity. "The human fleet consists of 47 ships," Admiral Kess reported. "They use technology that appears to be beyond our current capabilities. Quantum, shields, plasma weapons we cannot identify, and faster-than-light drives that leave no energy signature." "How is this possible?" demanded Colonel Drix Vorn, the traditional military leader who had always opposed using Jake's strategies. "We destroyed their homeworld. Their fleet was scattered." "Apparently not completely," Admiral Kess replied. "Long-range scans suggest these ships were built using a combination of human engineering and alien technology from species we have never encountered." Emperor Zerion looked at Jake with something that might have been curiosity or concern. The fleet demands this human's release. They claim he is essential to their survival. Jake remained silent, but his mind was racing. His people had not just survived the destruction of Earth. They had found allies and grown stronger. The thought filled him with pride and hope. "What do you recommend, Admiral?" the Emperor asked. "The human fleet is outnumbered, but their technology gives them significant advantages. A direct battle would be costly for both sides. However, they have made an interesting proposal." She activated a holographic display in the center of the throne room. It showed a detailed diplomatic message. "They offer to establish a colony world within our territory in exchange for permanent peace between our species. They want to share certain technologies and establish trade relationships." Colonel Vorn stepped forward angrily. "This is ridiculous. We do not negotiate with defeated enemies. We rule them." "These enemies are no longer defeated," Admiral Kess pointed out, "and their proposal includes something unprecedented." She highlighted a section of the message. "They offer the services of their strategic advisor, this human, as a military consultant to both civilizations, a shared resource for maintaining peace and stability." Emperor Zerion studied Jake intently. "You have become valuable to us, human. Your strategies have brought peace to troubled regions. Your methods save lives on all sides." Jake met the Emperor's gaze steadily, but said nothing. "Yet you have never spoken since your capture. Why?" For a moment, Jake considered breaking his silence, but something held him back. Words had failed him when Earth fell. Actions had succeeded where speeches could not. He shook his head slightly. "Perhaps he has nothing left to say," Colonel Vorn suggested mockingly. "Perhaps his people abandoned him because he was broken." Admiral Kess activated her personal communicator. "Send a message to the human fleet. We request a meeting with their commander." 3 hours later, a small human shuttle approached the Zephyrian flagship. Jake watched from the command center as it docked. His heart pounded as the airlock opened. Admiral Kate Ross stepped through first. She was older than when Jake had last seen her, with gray hair and new scars on her face. Behind her came Commander Dan Liu, Jake's former second-in-command, and a woman Jake did not recognize. "Colonel Morrison," Admiral Ross said when she saw Jake. Her voice carried a mixture of relief and anger. 2 years we have searched for you." Jake looked at his former commander and nodded once, the same greeting he had given Zephyrian officers for months. "They say you will not speak," Commander Liu said. "Is it true?" Jake nodded again. "Jake, we came back for you," Admiral Ross continued. "The fleet that escaped Earth found allies among the Outer Rim species. The Corvani taught us new technologies. The Threshold Republic gave us ships and weapons. We are stronger now than we ever were." She stepped closer to Jake. "But we need our best strategic mind. We need you to come home." Emperor Zerion entered the meeting room with Admiral Kess and several guards. The two groups faced each other across a negotiation table. "Admiral Ross," the Emperor said formally, "your arrival creates an interesting situation." "We want our officer back," Ross replied directly. "Colonel Morrison was captured during a legitimate military operation. Keeping him as a slave violates several interstellar treaties." "The human is no longer exactly a slave," Admiral Kess interjected. "He has become our most valuable strategic advisor. His methods have prevented numerous conflicts and saved countless lives." "Then you should understand why we need him back," Commander Liu said. Emperor Zerion looked at Jake. "What is your choice, human? Return to your people or remain with us?" Everyone in the room turned to look at Jake. For the first time in 2 years, his decision would determine the fate of nations. Jake walked to the tactical display in the center of the room. His fingers moved over the controls, bringing up star charts and fleet positions. Everyone watched in confusion as he worked. After several minutes, Jake stepped back. On the display was a complete strategic analysis of both fleets, the surrounding space, and potential conflict zones. But it was not a battle plan. Instead, Jake had designed something entirely different, a framework for cooperation. The plan showed how human and Zephyrian fleets could work together to explore unknown regions of space. It demonstrated how their different technologies could complement each other. It outlined trade routes, communication networks, and joint colonies. Most importantly, it showed how both civilizations could grow stronger together than either could alone. Admiral Ross stared at the display in amazement. "Jake, This is brilliant, but it assumes both sides want peace. We do, Emperor Zerion said slowly. The human strategies have shown us that conquest is not the only path to strength. Colonel Vorn objected loudly. This is weakness. We are Zephyrians. We take what we need. Jake turned to look at Colonel Vorn directly. Then he activated a different section of the tactical display. It showed the recent rebellions and how they had been resolved. Under traditional Zephyrian methods, the conflicts would have required massive military campaigns lasting years. Entire planets would have been destroyed. Millions would have died. Jake's strategies had ended the same conflicts in weeks with minimal casualties. The rebellious systems were now peaceful and productive members of the Empire. The human is right, Admiral Kess said quietly. His methods are not weakness, they are evolution. Emperor Zerion studied the cooperation framework for a long time. This plan would require unprecedented trust between our species. It would, Admiral Ross agreed. But Colonel Morrison has already shown that such trust is possible. She looked at Jake with new understanding. You never tried to escape. You never sabotaged their operations. You could have designed strategies that helped human resistance fighters. But you did not. Jake nodded slightly. You were testing them, Commander Liu realized, learning whether they could change. Emperor Zerion made his decision. We accept this framework for cooperation. The human will serve as strategic advisor to both civilizations. But first, Admiral Ross said, we need to hear from Jake himself. Colonel, after 2 years of silence, we need to know what you think. Everyone in the room turned to Jake expectantly. He looked around at the faces watching him. Zephyrian and human. Former enemies who might become allies. Jake opened his mouth for the first time since his capture. His voice was quiet, but clear. Are you ready to stop fighting and start building something better? The room fell completely silent. Then Emperor Zerion began to laugh. It was a sound like crystal bells ringing. The human speaks wisdom, the Emperor said. Yes, we are ready. Admiral, Ross smiled for the first time since entering the room. Then let's get to work. 6 months later, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the exploration ship Unity. Half the crew was human, half Zephyrian. The ship itself was built using technologies from both civilizations, creating something neither could have made alone. Through the massive view screen, Jake watched a new star system come into view. 7 planets orbited a yellow sun similar to Earth's. Long-range scans showed 3 worlds that might support life. Initial survey complete, reported Lieutenant Amy Chen, now Jake's chief science officer. 2 planets showed definite signs of intelligent civilization. Captain Rex Vale, the Zephyrian officer who had become Jake's military second-in-command, activated the communication array. No response to standard greeting protocols. The civilizations appear to be pre-space flight. Jake nodded and walked to the command chair that both human and Zephyrian crews had insisted he occupy. The title on his uniform read Strategic Coordinator, but everyone simply called him Commander. Recommendations? He asked his mixed crew. Standard Empire protocol would be to establish orbital control and begin colonization procedures, said one of the Zephyrian officers. Human exploration doctrine suggests peaceful contact and gradual introduction to galactic civilization, countered a human navigation specialist. Jake listened to both perspectives, then activated the tactical display. But instead of showing battle plans or invasion routes, it showed something entirely different. We will observe for 30 days, Jake announced. Study their cultures, languages, and technology levels. Then we will make contact using the Morrison Protocol. The Morrison Protocol had been developed during the past 6 months as human and Zephyrian exploration teams encountered new civilizations. Instead of conquest or immediate contact, it emphasized understanding and patience. First contact was made through careful cultural exchange. Advanced technologies were shared gradually. Military cooperation was offered for defense, not conquest. Most importantly, new civilizations were invited to join the growing alliance as equals, not subjects. Commander, Amy said privately after the bridge crew dispersed. You have changed everything. 6 months ago, the Zephyrians would have conquered this system within a week. Jake nodded thoughtfully. And 6 months ago, humans would have been too scared to make contact at all. It was true. The cooperation framework had transformed both civilizations. Humans had gained confidence and advanced technology. Zephyrians had learned patience and diplomacy. Together, they were exploring parts of the galaxy neither had dared to visit alone. "Incoming transmission from Admiral Kess," reported the communication officer. Admiral Kess appeared on the main screen. Behind her, Jake could see the command center of the Joint Fleet headquarters they had established. "Commander Morrison, I have news from the core worlds. 3 more species have requested to join the Alliance." "Which species?" Jake asked. "The Corvani Republic, who helped build your fleet, the mining guilds of the Asteroid Federation, and surprisingly, the Altarian Republic, led by General Pike Storm." Jake raised an eyebrow. General Storm, the tactical genius he had defeated during the rebellion, wanted to join their alliance. "Storm sent a personal message," Admiral Kess continued. "He says he has studied your methods and believes cooperation serves his people better than resistance." "What about the Zephyrian High Council? Do they approve of expanding the alliance?" "Emperor Zerion is enthusiastic. Colonel Vorn still objects, but he is being outvoted consistently. The economic benefits of the alliance have convinced most of the nobility." It was remarkable how quickly everything had changed. The trade routes between human colonies and Zephyrian worlds were producing wealth for both civilizations. Joint research projects were advancing technology at unprecedented rates. Most surprisingly, the combined military forces had brought peace to regions that had been fighting for centuries. "There is one concern," Admiral Kess added. "Intelligence reports suggest the Dominion Empire is taking notice of our expansion." Jake's expression grew serious. The Dominion was a massive military empire that controlled the central core of the galaxy. They were known for crushing any potential rivals before they could become threats. "How much time do we have?" Jake asked. "Unknown, but our analysts believe the Dominion will act within the year if we continue growing at this rate." Jake thanked Admiral Kess and ended the transmission. The bridge was quiet for a moment as the crew processed the implications. "Commander," Captain Vale said carefully, "if the Dominion declares war, can we survive?" It was a good question. The Alliance now included 7 species and controlled over 200 star systems. But the Dominion commanded thousands of systems and had been the dominant galactic power for over 500 years. "We will not just survive," Jake said quietly. "We will offer them a choice." Amy looked puzzled. "What kind of choice?" Jake activated the tactical display again. This time, he showed the entire galaxy. The Alliance controlled a small but growing section along the outer rim. The Dominion occupied the massive central core. Between them lay hundreds of independent species and smaller empires. "The Dominion rules through fear and force," Jake explained. "They demand tribute from weaker species and crush anyone who resists. But what if there was an alternative?" He began highlighting trade routes and communication networks. "Our alliance offers something the Dominion cannot. Partnership instead of domination. Mutual benefit instead of exploitation. Growth instead of stagnation." "You want to offer the Dominion membership in our alliance?" Captain Vale asked in amazement. "I want to offer them evolution," Jake replied. "The same choice we gave the Zephyrians. The same choice we are giving these new civilizations." Amy shook her head. "Jake, the Dominion has been conquering species for 5 centuries. They will not change overnight." "Perhaps not," Jake agreed. "But we have advantages they do not expect." He expanded the display to show detailed intelligence about Dominion territories. "Their empire is vast but inefficient. They spend enormous resources maintaining control over unwilling subjects. They fight constant rebellions and face regular military coups. Our alliance grows stronger every year because our members want to be here. We develop new technologies because our scientists share information freely. We explore new territories because every species contributes their unique abilities." Captain Vale was beginning to understand. "You believe the Dominion's own people will prefer our way. I believe intelligent beings generally prefer cooperation to oppression," Jake said. "The Dominion's greatest weakness is that they have never given their subjects a real alternative." Over the following weeks, as Unity completed its survey of the new star system, Jake developed his most ambitious strategy yet. Not a battle plan or a diplomatic initiative, but a comprehensive framework for galactic transformation. The plan was breathtaking in its scope. Instead of preparing for war, with the Dominion, the Alliance would offer integration opportunities to Dominion border worlds. Instead of military confrontation, they would compete economically and culturally. Most radically, Jake proposed sending an invitation directly to the Dominion Emperor. Not a surrender or a threat, but a genuine offer of partnership. You want to invite the most powerful military empire in the galaxy to join our alliance? Admiral Ross asked during a secure communication from the human homeworlds. I want to show them that power does not have to come from conquest, Jake replied. That strength can come from cooperation. And if they refuse and declare war instead? Jake was quiet for a moment, looking out at the stars through Unity's view screen. Then we will defend ourselves, but we will defend principles worth fighting for. Emperor Zarian's voice came through the communication link from the Zephyrian capital. Commander Morrison, your strategies have never failed us. But this seems impossibly optimistic. It is optimistic, Jake agreed. But 6 months ago, humans and Zephyrians working together seemed impossible too. Admiral Kess joined the conversation from Fleet Headquarters. The Alliance Council has voted. We will implement the Morrison Doctrine for galactic cooperation. Jake smiled slightly. I never asked for it to be named after me. You earned it, Amy said from her science station. Your silence taught us to listen. Your strategies taught us to think differently. Your words, when you finally spoke them, taught us to hope. The Morrison Doctrine will be our gift to the galaxy, Emperor Zarion declared. The idea that any civilization can choose cooperation over conquest, partnership over domination, growth over stagnation, as Unity prepared to make first contact with the two civilizations in the new star system. Jake reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From captured slave to strategic coordinator, from silence to speaking the language of hope. His greatest victory had not been defeating the rebellion or outmaneuvering General Storm. It had been showing both enemies and allies that there was another way to live among the stars. Jake Morrison had learned that the most powerful words were often the ones you did not say until the moment was exactly right. And sometimes, the most important battles were the ones you fought not to win, but to make sure everyone could win together. The future was still uncertain. The Dominion might choose war over peace. New challenges would certainly arise. But for the first time since leaving Earth, Jake felt genuinely hopeful about what lay ahead. The galaxy was vast and full of possibilities, and humanity had finally found its voice among the stars, not as conquerors or victims, but as builders of something better. Jake looked out at the unknown worlds waiting to be explored and allowed himself one more small smile. The best was yet to come.